Hi, I'm Dana, and today I wanted to make a video talking about going through high school as an undiagnosed autistic person. I've watched a lot of videos like this and found them really relatable and comforting, and obviously we're all different people with different experiences, so I thought I'd share mine. I've been saying for ages that this video's coming, but I've been putting it off because high school was a really sucky time for me. High school was I'm massively underplaying it. High school was the worst time of my entire life. Like, every single day that I wake up, I am relieved to not be in school still. And I think that's the way for a lot of autistic people. I'm 24, so I left high school 8 years ago, and I still regularly have things that I remember that pop up that I have to work through that are from high school, from things that people said to me or ways that I was treated or whatever else. And I know people are much older than me as well that are autistic who have the same experiences and leftover trauma, I suppose, from school. So even though it's not something I particularly want to talk about, I think it's something that's very important to talk about, and hopefully I can provide some degree of relatability and comfort and whatever else to people in the same way that other people's videos have provided that to me. So let's get into it, I guess. I didn't start high school in the UK until just after Christmas of year 9. So I was 13 going on 14. And that was when my high school experience started. And from literally day one, I knew that I wasn't gonna have the best time. I got assigned a buddy to help take me around the school and show me where I meant to go and everything. They lost me, they intentionally dropped me within the first 10 minutes of having met me. I had to find my way around school on my own. So I was just showing up late to classes and stressing my little head off. My second day, it turned out I'd said something on my first day that someone had found offensive towards them specifically, despite the fact I hadn't met them yet. So I had 3 girls, as soon as I walked into the gates of the schoolyard, just go in on me and start shouting at me and calling me names. And that's pretty close to how it continued, honestly. A lot of people weren't so blatant about it, but very few people were what I would have said were kind to me. I genuinely appreciated the people that just didn't speak to me, because I was like, hey, they seem nice. They don't intentionally upset me. Wow, what nice people. And it's no, they're ignoring you. It's very much a laugh or cry situation for me. So I'm gonna be probably a bit strangely jolly in this video, because otherwise I would probably cry. So I was very quickly branded the weird kid, because I suppose I was the weird kid. I'd moved back from Denmark, so it was entirely different culture and experience to me. And I also had so many preconceived notions of what high school in the UK would be. Because all I'd really experienced of UK high school on television was Sarah Jane Adventures. So I had a lot of high expectations that were not met, and a lot of things I hadn't expected at all that I was met with. I still find it quite hard to say that I was bullied in high school, because for one, I don't like feeling like I'm being a victim. I don't feel like feeling like I really don't like feeling like I'm putting myself into the victim mentality or trying to take some sort of victimhood, because I don't know why, but it makes me feel like that's what I'm doing when I say, hey, I got bullied. I feel like I'm just playing the victim. But also a lot of it was stuff that I'm just I highly doubt those people even still remember it, things that absolutely crippled my self-esteem and self-confidence and how I viewed myself. They probably don't even remember doing it or saying it. And that feels a certain way. That's something I need to get over. But that's what I mean, at 24 years old, 8 years after having left high school, I still have things from high school that I need to get over and that I'm trying to work through. And I think this video will help me with that. And I hope it helps other people. I'm rambling because I don't want to talk about this. So yeah, I was pretty quickly branded the weird kid, and I didn't really understand why. I didn't know what I was doing that was so weird that people would call me weird or say oh, you're a bit strange, aren't you? I just didn't know what it was. I was I'm being like everyone else is. So once everyone had decided I was the weird kid, I was like, fuck it, I'm playing into this then. I would Kubrick stare at people across the classroom. That was a time. I tried just going up to people and be like, can I hang out with you? To which the answer was pretty much always, no. And every now and again, someone would clearly just take pity on me and be like, oh, of course you can, Dana, of course you can, come on. But I could tell that it was pity. So I ended up spending most of my high school time sat upstairs in the science block in the corridor where no one would find me. And when people started hanging out there, I switched to sitting by the drama room on my own. And teachers would come along and be like, are you okay? I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I just don't want to be around anyone. And anyone else, they would make leave the whole corridor. We weren't allowed to be in the corridors on a break time. And they would just leave me to it. But in a lot of ways, looking back, it's the teachers that kind of annoy me the most. Because I got I don't want to say I got close with any of them because none of it was dodgy or weird or anything beyond what a teacher should be. But I got relatively close to some of them, you know. I spent a good amount of time with some of them. I'd spend like lunch breaks or whatever in their classroom with them, like chatting about shit or doing extra work or whatever. And there's so many things that I'm just like, well, that was an autistic trait and that was an autistic trait and that was an autistic trait. And not a single teacher ever picked up on it and like said anything to my parents or to me or to anyone. It kind of frustrates me. And I also feel like it's almost the autistic experience that we all had that one teacher in school that just hated us for no reason. And like, I had some strict teachers where like everyone agreed they're shit, they're rude, they're mean, they're just not a great teacher, you know? And then I had one teacher, I'll call her Miss Chewbacca purely because that's what my mum called her, it was not her name. She was my history teacher and she just despised me. Like, she'd make snide little comments about me not being the sharpest tool in the shed. She would do things just like specifically go out of her way to get me into trouble or to like make my day harder. Like, she lost some of my coursework. That meant that I failed my history GCSE. One time she'd phoned my dad about something I'd apparently done. I don't remember what it was, but it was something I hadn't done. And she'd phoned my dad, who was like, well, she hasn't done it. Like, if she says she hasn't done it, she probably hasn't, because like Dana literally doesn't lie. Like, if she had done it, she'd just tell you, oh yeah, I did it because of XYZ, what are you gonna do about it? So if she says she didn't do it, she didn't do it. And she hung up the phone with my dad and turned to me and was like, your father is so insolent and like insubordinate. And I was just, that was the final straw for me with her. And I just saw red. Like, it was like I blacked out for a minute. Like, I was not in control of myself. And I was just screaming at her, like absolutely screaming at her, like she's a piece of shit bitch and she cannot talk about my fucking dad that way. And she stood there and took it because she clearly didn't know what to fucking do because I was already like a foot taller than her. And my French teacher came in and was like, oh, what's going on here? So I explained that she's just said this about my dad. And he was just like, oh, okay. Closed the door and left. So I just carried on shouting at her. And after that, I got switched out of her class and I wasn't allowed to go to her classroom anymore. I didn't have to do history anymore, even though we'd basically finished it anyway. And she'd been my form tutor as well. So I didn't have to go up to like that first tutor block. I don't remember what it was called. But I had a lot of that in high school where I was just moved about and switched about and like, oh, you can't deal with this here. Like, no one likes you in this class. We're going to move you to this other class. And I had a lot of run-ins that was similar to that with other students as well. And so many teachers were incredibly lenient with me and really, really kind to me. Like, for example, there was one student that constantly just niggled at me. Like, again, I don't want to say she bullied me because I don't feel like she went out of her way to do it. It was just any time I was in her vicinity, she was like, okay, gonna say something horrible about Dana now. But my English teacher had put me in a group to read with her. And I speak quite quickly. I read even faster. For anyone wondering, it's a mixture of I just can't help it, this is just how I am. And I'm so incredibly anxious about people listening to me and boring them that I just want to get all of my words out of the way as quickly as humanly possible so I don't bore them with speaking for any longer than I have to. So I was reading the book out loud in the group like we were supposed to, admittedly quite quickly. And every sentence, this girl would just be like, you're reading too fast, I don't know what you're saying. Are you even reading the book? Are you reading this? Are you saying the words? Literally every sentence. And I slowed down. I went as slow as I could. I read it slower than I am currently speaking to you. It was a snail's pace. And she continued doing it. And I'd had enough. And again, it was like I blacked out. I very, very rarely get angry. Like, I've had experiences like this maybe twice in my entire adult life since high school. Happened all the time in high school. I just sort of was not in control of myself anymore. My brain took over without me being a part of it. And I threw the book at him and was like, you fucking read it then. Read it your fucking self. Like, incredibly loudly in the middle of a classroom of people reading quite quietly. And you'd think, like, you've just sworn in class, you've just thrown a book that belongs to the school at another student, you've screamed in the middle of class and stood up. I'd be getting, like, sent to the head teacher or whatever, wouldn't I? My English teacher was an absolute baby. He was brilliant. And he was just like, are you okay? Do you want to just go and read the book on your own? And I was like, yes, I do. But my point is that I had a lot of accommodations put in place for me by teachers and various people within the school because I couldn't cope with what every other student could cope with. I just could not deal with it. You know, I so often just got so overwhelmed, or the situations that I was put in made me so anxious and so upset that I didn't feel like I was even in control of myself anymore. And, you know, anyone else for doing the things that I was doing would get in a lot of trouble. But I was given extreme, like, leniency and accommodations, essentially. And I'm like, so could you see that there was something that set me aside from the other students, some way in which I was different? Did no one catch on that I was autistic? Because, like, you're giving me the accommodations that you give to the special needs kids when I'm supposed to just be a regular student. So why was that happening? Why did no one see it? It's frustrating even now. You know, like, if someone had pulled me up then and been like, hey, do you think you might be autistic? I would have looked into it then instead of when I was 20. And I would have felt a lot better, and like I wasn't just some freak going about my life in the world. But anyway, I did eventually make a handful of friends in school. I'd say it was 2 girls that I was actually friends with and one that they were friends with. But the issue that I often came across, and still mostly do, is that in a friendship group, I'll maybe have like 2 or 3 people that I get on really well with and that I'm pretty sure like me and I like them. And then the rest of the friendship group are sort of like, why have you brought her into this? Like, they don't like me. I don't tend to particularly dislike them until they start being like that. And then I'm like, oh. But, you know, like, I'm never accepted or liked or enjoyed by the entire friendship group. And that just puts a lot of strain on it. And, you know, when everyone's a nice friendship group until I arrive, he's the first one getting kicked out. But then even within the friendship groups, it was like I say, I was pretty sure these girls liked me. I liked them. We hung out together outside of school every now and again. But then you'd get to like the days where we're all sat there eating lunch and they're planning their shopping trip to Chester. And I'm just sat there like, oh, I guess I'm not invited then. Anyone that's like my age as well, I'm sure you remember going to school between like 2010 and 2013. There was a lot of just horrible shit going around in those kids. Like, I think it's probably even worse now, but I knew so many people in my class that had like eating issues and self-harm issues, and I was one of them. And it was all like fueled by the anxiety of knowing that I didn't fit in, knowing that people didn't like me, and being like, well, how do I make them like me? I'll get skinny. And when that doesn't work, you've got all this, every day is just overwhelming. No one likes me. Everyone hates me, I think. I don't even particularly like myself. I don't want to be here anymore. Self-harm starts. And then you get picked on for doing that as well. Or at least you did back then. I would hope that teenagers are a bit nicer about like mental health related stuff now. But when I was in school, it was just, oh, you fucking emo. Oh, go listen to My Chemical Romance and cry in a corner and just get on with it. So even when I found, admittedly, terribly poor coping mechanisms, I was picked on for trying to cope as well. But there were some coping mechanisms that came around that were helpful to me at the time, and some of them have continued to be really helpful. So one good example of that is that for the majority of my life, I was very, very softly spoken. You know, like, people had asked me a question and I'd reply in this tone of voice. That was the loudest I went. And obviously I'm not like that anymore. I'm not this loud in real life. This is the filming Dana, this is my filming personality, I guess. You know, it's me and it's authentic, but it's also trying to be entertaining and interesting and make sure my microphone actually picks me up. But it meant that every time a student asked me something or a teacher asked a question, I'd have to repeat myself like 4 or 5 or 6 times while everyone's just staring at me. And eventually I was like, yo, I'd much rather be really loud and stupidly say the wrong thing and just have everyone laugh and get over it than have to keep repeating myself. Like, just repeating myself makes me so anxious. Because it's like, if you've said something stupid, you've backed it up multiple times. Whereas if I'm just loud and they hear the stupid thing, it's done, it's out there. I only said it once, I can be like, oh, I just wasn't thinking. Whereas when you've said it 5 times, you clearly did think about it. So I very much just learned to speak up and be louder and project my voice because it made my life easier. It made me that bit less anxious. And that was also where the smiley Dana happened. Because for the majority of my life prior to that, I didn't have an awful lot of facial expressions. Most facial expressions I do, I still put some degree of thought into. Very few facial expressions just come to me naturally, unless I'm in like very specific situations. But in high school, people would notice that. People would be like, why do you have such a blank face? Why do you not like express anything? Why do you never smile? Why do you never do this, never do this, never do this? It felt constant. So I was like, okay, people don't like it when I'm just me. So if I make sure I'm always smiling and laughing and look friendly and approachable, then people will like me. And now I can't get rid of it. I can be in situations where I'm incredibly uncomfortable or upset or just generally not good, and I smile through them because I'm just like, well, you can't look mean or unapproachable now, can you? You can't look bored. And how do you not look any of those things? You smile. I don't know how to do other facial expressions. But even with that, I still had people literally tell me that I was off-putting. Like, what a 15-year-old thinks of people as off-putting? In real. Like, it's not like I was going to some nice private school. In real. But there you have it. So I decided, like, everyone's decided I'm this, like, weird, off-putting, just strange, worth nothing kind of person. So I'm going to play into that. I began taking great pleasure in just freaking people out. I would, like, Kubrick stare at people across the classroom. It was, like, I would fully just, okay, I'm in class, I'm bored, gonna choose that person. And I'd just do that till they noticed. And then they'd obviously be weirded out and off-put. And it was like, well, that's fine, because I decided to do that. It's no longer that they're finding me that way. They're finding these things that I'm doing that way. It was very much this, like, protective barrier of, like, if I'm intentionally weird, if I'm intentionally off-putting, if I intentionally make people think I'm scary or creepy or weird or not nice, then it's not a judgment of me anymore. It's the things I'm doing to make them think that. It's not me. And obviously that just made everyone think I was even weirder and more off-putting. But it did really help me, like, emotionally, being able to just be like, well, that's not me. I go home, I go on Tumblr, and then that's me. This weird off-putting girl that no one likes, that's not me. That's just the person that I'm being for them because they decided that's what I was. But it's not me. And through all of that, I still had a handful of friends. And looking back, I see them as really quite, like, impressively resilient and quite kind teenagers to have continued being my friend through that. But I also had no idea how to be a friend. And as I say, as much as I say that about them, they would, like, plan shopping trips without me in front of me. They would talk about the party they're going to the next day that I had no idea about and would definitely not be attending because I was not invited, right in front of me. But I don't see them as, like, the worst people. It's just we were teenagers and you don't think that much about each other's feelings and that, you know? The fact that they were still my friends means enough. But as I say, I had no idea, I didn't know how to be a friend. So if, like, one of them said something someone else had mentioned in person or whatever, I'd be like, oh yeah, because such and such said this. And they'd be like, she said what? And then they're arguing and I'm like, that was me. So then between my friends, I was the gossipy one. I was the one that you just shouldn't tell anything. And it's like, no, if you tell me something, tell me, don't tell anyone. No one is ever going to hear it from me. But they didn't. They'd just tell me stuff. And as an adult who's been through that situation now, I'm like, oh, yeah, they were, like, not secrets per se, but not things that you just straight up go, oh, yeah, such and such said. Whereas at the time, I was just like, well, you did say. You said that to me. I didn't know I was supposed to not be telling people or keeping it a secret. I didn't think there was anything wrong with just telling people that. But to them, I was just another teenage girl, and it's like, well, you fucking knew not to gossip. So for the last few months of high school, I didn't have any friends, I didn't have anyone I spoke to, and it sucked. I was entirely just isolating myself. To some degree, like, other students had like forced me to do it, but I mostly in the end just isolated myself because I'd had enough. Like, I was just so done. And like through all of this, I'd always had my special interests. And like I say, it was the time I was a Tumblr girl. I was real obsessed with Sherlock. And obviously Sherlock has the whole like, I don't need friends thing. And I have notebooks that I like, diary type of things that I kept in high school. I'm considering doing a video going through them. I think that could be something. But I would write like, I don't need friends. I don't think there's any point to having friends. And I did. I really fucking wanted friends as a teenager. But when every other teenager you come into contact with makes you feel worse about yourself, eventually you're going to shut them all out and just be like, I don't need you. But that just meant I was all the more depressed. So for the last few months of school, my entire routine was go to school, come home, stay up until like 2 a.m. watching Sherlock and Supernatural and going on Tumblr, sleep for like 4 hours, go to school. Start it all again. I spent my lunch breaks and like all my other breaks, and sometimes even sometime like before school, sat in the school library watching Supernatural on their computers. I just completely retreated from the world, essentially. I was like, none of yous like me, none of you are nice to me, I don't enjoy being around people, so I'm not gonna be. I'm gonna completely just, these are my shows, these are my characters I care about, I don't need anything else. So eventually it came time to leave school, and it was such a relief. A lot of my memories of high school and like the surrounding times are kind of fuzzy, to say the least. I don't really remember an awful lot. But I very, very clearly remember my last day of high school. Because in the UK, it's like essentially tradition at like all schools. On your last day, everyone signs your shirt. I had 10 or 15 signatures. Quite a few people had written really mean, horrible things on it. Or otherwise just been like, you're never going to make it, just die. You know, it was unpleasant. So I'd gotten a few people in trouble, but it's like, what can you do? It's our last day. But like, I haven't really thought about that before, but it's literally like, it was the last day you were ever going to see me. Like, I'd made very clear to everyone, I'm moving to Liverpool after this. I'm not coming back. I'm not seeing any of us again. And even knowing that, on the last day they were ever going to see me, they still felt the need to write just like horrible shit literally on me. Like, a lot of people save those shirts and like literally have them forever. Like, I'm pretty sure my brother still has his from high school, and he's like 10 years older than me. A lot of people save them as a really pleasant memory of like your high school friends. And I couldn't do that because I had like 3 nice comments, and the rest was either just pleasantries because they'd realised, oh, we're not seeing him again, miss, well, just good luck, there you go. Followed by a load of just horrible shit. So everyone had just sort of pissed around for the last day. We'd all gone into the cafeteria where like one of the teachers had given a little speech, our form tutor had said some shit, the head teacher had said some shit. I'd been sat there the entire time just thinking like, when can I leave? I never have to come back here and I want to go now. So eventually they were sort of like, okay, if you want to leave now you can, but obviously you're gonna miss each other, so like stay around, say bye to people, talk about what you're gonna do, it'll be a nice time. And people immediately like moved to each other, lots of people were crying. I left, I started walking home. I was the only person that left at that time as far as I'm aware, didn't see anyone else leave. And I could not have been happier to be out. Knowing that there was like such a little chance that I'd even see those people again, never mind have to interact with them, live with them in my day-to-day life. The fact that I didn't need to go back to the teachers, because like I say, some of them were fantastic and they kept me going through high school, but some of them were fucking awful. And especially when you're like 14, 15, 16, I'd look at them and be like, so even adults aren't nice to each other. Like, even adults, like, if you're being shit to a teenager, you're definitely not nice to like other adults, are you? So this is never gonna end, was my thought there. But at least I was out of high school. Even now, 8 years on, if I'm having a bad day where I'm like, God, why is this my life? Just the thought of like, well, you're not in high school anymore, makes me feel better. Like, it improves my whole day. I'm just like, oh God, yeah, like, at least I'm not in high school. Like, college wasn't great for me. I dropped out twice. It obviously wasn't great for me, but it was nowhere near the same level of high school. It was so much better than high school still, even though it was pretty shit. I might make a whole video about like my college experiences. I just really knew that I wanted to do a high school one because I feel like for so many of us, that's where our trauma's from. You know, I don't think all of mine comes from that. I don't think all of my issues come from high school, but I don't think I'd be as anxious as I am if it weren't for like the things I experienced in high school. I don't think I'd be as like absolutely terrified of meeting new people and having social situations if it weren't for how I was treated by people in high school. You know, there's just lots and lots of little ways that I am where I don't think I'd be that way if I'd had a better high school experience. And I don't even necessarily like, I'm not saying like I needed to be popular and then like all my problems would like not be here. I just mean like if people had ignored me instead of being horrible to me, if people had just let me to like have my own little bubble that I'd lived in up until that point without just popping it to like send a load of shit into me, I think I'd be a very different person. But at the same time, I think that it's probably made me like a lot more compassionate to other people, and I consider my words a lot more like when speaking to other people because I know how many things people said. But even at the time I was like, I know they didn't mean this to be horrible, but boy did it hurt. And I do think it's important to look for the positives in a negative situation. Not all the time, but in hindsight especially. Like sometimes when you're going through a hard time, you do just need to cry and be like, my life is the worst. But if you do that when you're looking back on things, that's not going to be helpful. So I think it's important to look back and be like, I gained positive traits. You know, I gained a lot of other shit too. But I think I gained some like positive personality traits from it. I think that it strengthened me as a person. I think it made me really see at quite a young age compared to a lot of people what kind of person I wanted to try to be as an adult. But it still sucked. You couldn't pay me to go back. Very quickly at the end here, for how long I've been filming, I'm assuming this is going to be my longest video to date. So if you've lasted this long already, well done. But just in case there's anyone like in high school here who wants some tips, just get through it. You know, I could give you 1,000,001 tips of like, oh, if you say this, people think this, and if you do this, then people do this. But frankly, just get through it. Try and figure yourself out. Try and keep your head down and stay out of other people's way. Try and get a few friends who will actually be kind to you and nice to you, or at least a group you can sit with that won't shit all over you, and just get through it. You know, I don't know how your life's gonna go, but for me, nothing in my life as an adult has been as tough and just hard-hitting and constant as high school was. Nothing. Like, being a grown-up isn't the easiest thing in the world either. I don't think anyone gets a break at any point ever. But God, is it not as hard as being in high school? You know, you've got different worries and different situations and different issues. But for me, I've never had as many issues that I had in high school. I've never felt as down and miserable and hated as I did in high school. But I like to think that a lot of teenagers now are a bit more understanding of mental health issues, a bit more understanding of how other people work, the fact that other teenagers also have emotions. Because I do really think that most of the people that said and did things in high school that massively hurt me and upset me, and some of them I still think about sometimes now, they probably don't remember them because they probably didn't see it as that big a deal. You know, there's the odd person from high school that I absolutely do think was really trying to hurt me. But for the most part, I think that most people just said shit because it was what other people did. Everyone's horrible to this girl, so why wouldn't you be? Everyone laughs when you say something horrible about this girl. So like, hey, they all laugh at your joke now. It's great, isn't it? You know, I don't think most people did it to hurt me. I think they did it for some other reason and they just didn't care that the result was hurting me because you're a teenager, and a lot of us just didn't think about other people's emotions. I think that's all I want to say in this video. Like I said, I think it's probably going to be my longest video yet. So well bloody done if you've lasted this long. If you've lasted this long, I would assume that you like me to some degree. So if you wanted to subscribe and maybe like the video, that'd be real cool of you. There is quite a few bits that I skipped over here because I didn't want to go into detail about like my personal trauma for one. And there's also a nice chunk of high school where I was being bullied for being gay. So I don't feel like that particularly ties into this or is like overly relevant to bring up in here. But there's a lot of stuff I didn't mention because I don't think they did it because I was autistic. I don't think it was part of growing up as an autistic person. it was being gay. But yeah, that was my high school experience. I hope that you had a better one, but whatever kind of high school experience you had, if you're comfortable doing so, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If there's anything here that like you relate to with me, or that you appreciate me talking, and don't thank me for shit, no, ignore that one. But you know, like, I like there to be a discussion about things. I really enjoy reading your experiences and stuff in the comments, because there's you know, these videos actually get views now. There's people actually watching these videos, and that's really weird to me. So if you wanted to comment, I really like knowing that actual real people are watching these. I don't know. So much of my internet experience has been just screaming into the void, and it absolutely blows my mind anytime I get a view or a comment or a like or a new subscriber. Vaguely feel like I'm being pranked. Would be nice to know that I'm not. So, God, sorry this has been so long, so rambly, so word vomity. It's a very difficult topic to talk about, and this is the best way that I could do it. I did notes. I did do notes. So whoever you are and wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely day, evening, afternoon, morning, week, month. I don't know what I'm saying. I definitely did that wrong. But I'll see you again in a few days.